And I think that's what we all want as an industry. I would like for my industry to be strong and healthy, to have good professionals. And you always wonder, kind of like that old George Jones song, is who's going to fill those shoes?
Hey, Wood Floor Pros, Wood Floor Business Editor Kim Walgren here. This is part 2 of our episode with industry legend Daniel Boone. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, I highly recommend you back up and listen to part 1 first. If you have, let's just get right back into our conversation with Daniel.
When you're setting up machines, are you setting them up right from a particular grit, the raw pad, or what the guy's using the machine for when you're like doing the actual balancing and setup?
Okay.
Give me that.
Okay. The setup is actually a factory setup.
Yeah.
And you can set the factory setup. It's one piece of paper, no pads. In a very rare instance or exception, would you put a pad on it? So for me, I'll just say this up front. If you're running walnut, American walnut, or you're running cherry, American cherry, something that's soft, I may put a pad on there to keep that machine from digging.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's going to be one piece of paper to the pad.
Okay.
And that's it. That's a factory pad. It's a rubber pad. I like the factory pad better. If the machine is set up and adjusted right, the pad's cut or dressed the factory setting, which is 3 rings in on that pad.
Mm-hmm.
The height is set. And if you set it at 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, whatever it may be, everybody likes a different cutting point where that machine touches.
Mm-hmm.
I myself was probably about 11:30.
Yeah.
Met some guys up in Michigan that like to run theirs at 1 o'clock, which is perfectly fine. So wherever you make that contact point, but setting that edger up, having good wheels on it, whether you put urethane wheels or steel wheels, good bearings. At that particular class, we put in brush block with brushes, switch, light, pigtail, wheels, bearings, pad, new wrench, whatever it takes when they bring their edger in. But the point is that teaching them how to set that machine up on a job site, to me, is critical. If you got a big job, you got multiple edgers, you got somebody that can set that machine up, so either you or your men or women I know some good edger gals out there, can run that machine, and you're not putting any kind of swirls or digs in the floor, especially with your softwoods or any kind of wood. And so I think that's how it's done. We do a factory setup. Brian Kinsey, our tech guy up in Sparta, North Carolina, at the factory there, he comes along. He got the ability to teach all the technical stuff, taking it apart, putting it together, why you do this and that, why these parts are made specifically. We like to use OEM parts. So in that class, I feel confident that it is taught in the fashion that when they leave, they got a good edger that's set up, that runs good, and now they know how to maintain it and keep it in tune.
Hey, you guys got some really good videos online. Can I still use a nickel and a dime? Is that still cool?
Nickel and dime on a B2?
Yeah, on a B2.
You can put that on left or right, depending upon it. And it's 3 pennies on a Super 7, dead center. And you can adjust that to how you can adjust it flat. It's going to cut 12 o'clock. How you adjust your wheels, I guess, depends on the person that's running that machine. Yeah. But knowing how to do it and then unlock them back. And again, running a machine to know when something's going wrong. If you got a bearing that's bad, you got brushes that are arcing, and know when to keep that machine maintained. That's how you make your money.
Do you share the hands-on part versus the classroom part, or would you conduct both? Here's the hands-on, here's the classroom. How's that start? You start with classroom and then say we're going to move on now to...
Right. So I'll do the classroom part. And if there's at any time I would need to bring another instructor in, whoever that may be, it could be Brandon. If Brandon's at the class, it could be Steve Seabaugh. And I would say, okay, this segment right here, I'm going to let Steve or Brandon cover this part right here. They got the PowerPoint presentation. I'll have a seat and I'll let them go through that and explain that part. So I like to include everyone that's a part of the team, that the students hear from us all. And so if any time in the class that they don't get opportunity to speak, when we go outside to do the demo for work order A, that may be the running the big machine, how it runs, how you take it apart, how you put the paper on, how do you adjust tracking, the whole 9 yards. How do you actually use the machine where you're rolling it, feathering it down, back up? Because a lot of people that's never put their hands on a machine, the first thing they're going to do is take a trip to China. They're going to cut a hole in the floor, and they need to know that.
Yeah.
And you need to shed light on it at that point. But to let that instructor, that professional, handle that part of the class, and then when it comes to time to demo the edger, we'll let another person demo the edger. So I try to cover, we cover all the bases, but let everyone have an opportunity at the training part. That way they hear from us all. Again, a team effort.
Let me ask you this, because it's my favorite day of the training is the buffer one of the...
Oh, yeah.
It's my favorite day. I'll buff with my pinky.
Yeah.
And just kind of do it. Who wants to step on up? And there's always somebody that fights it. It won't just let go.
Yeah. Well, the buffer will win every time.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
For somebody that don't know how to run it.
Yeah, especially if you got
hilarious.
60 grit paper on it.
Right.
I've seen people gallop alongside it and smash into a wall. Just let go of the handle.
The buffer's always adds the spice to the class, where you get a little laughs and a little good humor there of figuring out these guys or gals, whoever it may be, trying to run it.
Do you see different people, like they really can grasp the classroom hands-on, while others are more like, I really got to get out there and look at this?
Right.
You must spot that pretty quick.
So a lot of times what you say in a class, what you're doing is there's guys that sit there and kind of go through it with you. They're looking out there in their manual at the same slide I'm on. They're following along, and there's some of them that sit there that it doesn't click in until you're finished with the demo. Then the question comes out, or you see their attitude or body language changes, that okay, they're engaging. They're not just standing back with their arms crossed. They're paying attention to what's going on. And I will say this, Steve, by the end of any class that I've done through the last 31, 32 years, you'll see a change in 99% of the class. You may get that one that walks out there and say, well, I didn't learn a thing, but in reality he did. He just don't want to tell nobody because this guy thinks he knows it all.
You get people that pull you aside and go, I'm really intimidated, but can I ask you a question? And they don't want to share with other people that maybe they have a lack of knowledge at something like that.
Right.
But those are the people it's the ones that say they know everything that scare me. It goes crazy.
We had those guys show up at edger class all the time.
Right.
But the bottom line is, Steve, is you're there to help. You're there to share your knowledge. You're there to point that person, that professional, in the right direction. And again, I'll say this, hopefully in those couple of days you can get to them and just make a difference. And I think that's what we all want as an industry. I would like for my industry to be strong and healthy, to have good professionals. And you always wonder, kind of like that old George Jones song, is who's going to fill those shoes? Who's going to be the next group of young professionals that come up that are going to run these training programs, that are going to teach, that are going to have the patience, have the mind and the heart to handle 30 people in the class, or 16 people, or 12 people in the class. And you got to spend 2 or 3 days with them from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7, 8 o'clock at night. If you go out to dinner, that you can point them in the right way and confident that when they leave that they've taken it all in.
Yeah.
Like I said, that phone will ring 3 months from now and they go, hey man, I got it. I figured it out. And I said, okay. And you know that they're thinking, they're trying to apply what they learn in that class on their everyday life. And when they do that, it just makes them a better wood floor professional.
I want to steal this question from you because it's never been answered. Why would someone say, oh boy, I would rather run a 7R or Super 7 than a B2?
Okay, a Super 7 is probably the most commonly used edger. I mean, there's other edgers out there.
And not here.
So whatever you use, just be good at it, know how to set it up.
Which is the one that bangs your knuckles because it's tall on stairs. Is that the B2?
So, but Super 7 is actually the B2 turns more RPMs than Super 7. It don't sound like it.
Yeah.
But a Super 7 to train on is a good machine for someone to learn on.
Yeah.
Of how to run it, how to clock it, how to make it cut flat.
Yeah.
The B2, again, it's 2-speed, high-low. But the B2 is a hard cutting edger.
Yeah.
So if I've got a job that's got some hardwood, some cupped wood, some old finish, I'd use the B2.
Sure.
Because it'll get it on off there. You get the job done. Not saying the Super 7 won't.
You're cutting like plywood.
But I would use the B2 first and then maybe come back with the Super 7. But if you got a B2 and it's set up right, It's an excellent running machine, but it's a hard cutting machine.
It's funny you say that. I had both, and I used to say to people, watch this. I run my B2 at 10.
Right.
My 7R, I could run it. I could do stairs, just hold the top of it. You didn't even have to hold the handle.
Right.
That, it's very precise. It's a smooth running machine. So, okay, we got some of that covered. When you're training and you're getting feedback from the students, what are the little breakthroughs that you see each time that you go to dinner and you go, wow, we got it? What are you looking for these newbie people to pick up that you go, good, they got it. They've picked it up now. They're doing it. They're getting it.
That they're talking about what we did that day.
Yep.
If you get them to, if they're quiet, they're not engaged, they're not interested, you can pick that up. But I would say 99.9% of the time when we go out to dinner, after the class comes 5 o'clock, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here, clean up, lock the place up. 6 o'clock, we're all still standing there talking, or they're over there still edging, or they're over there doing something with the scraper, whatever it may be. You know that you got to them at that point because they don't want to leave. And that would be the case, again, 99% of the time is getting them out of the building.
Sure.
So when you see that they're actually taking what they learned that day and applying it and sharing information between each other. And some of these guys were strangers that morning, but that afternoon they're becoming best friends, and you see that happen at every class, every school.
Yeah.
And these guys exchange numbers and message each other and do all the social media stuff. And then you hear a month or two later that the Bill got in a truck and drove to Brandon's house, and they're going to work on the job together today.
Right.
And you'll see that a lot where they kind of team up and again, learn from each other. So I think that's good. I think there's a lot of friendship made, but also there's amount of excellence that comes out of the classes where they get that bug of wanting to be that wood floor professional. They want to be that good at their skill, that good at their craft. And I've seen a lot of these guys that's come to the school within a year or two doing some really nice job that they post up on social media. And, they've taken what they've learned and applied it and want to better themselves as a wood floor professional.
Let me ask you, because you could straighten me out here. I have a customer that's been doing this his whole life, and his floors I go in there absolutely beautiful. And I asked him about his edging. He edges the whole house, and when he's done, he hand scrapes all his edging. Is that because he didn't edge right, or is he just being?
I hand scrape all my edges.
Okay, good.
I hand sand all my edges.
He does this. I started doing it, and I'm like, and then I might even run a little hand sand over it, and.
Right. So yeah, that's old school, and I know a lot of the old schools and even the younger school probably still does that, and that would apply to the type of wood, type of finish, the type of stain that you're using.
Yep.
If you say that to a group of a younger generation guys, they're going to think you're out of your mind to hand scrape, block sand, whatever it may be on whatever type of floor you're working on. Right. They're going to get some type of orbital sander. Can be hooked to a vacuum. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
But if you look around, like one of my favorite shows that's not on TV anymore was Overhauling with Chip Foose.
Okay.
Now, as far as in the car industry, man, that guy's at the top. But if you ever watch them block sand one of them hot rod cars to get it flat, there is a purpose and a reason for block sanding. To me, the edges, and so a lot of times you want to make the edges look just like the field.
Yeah.
You don't want to make the field look like the edges. So when you do that, I got specific jobs that I go to where you got a lot of light, just like you're working with a hard wax oil, and you want to make that floor super flat. So when they look at it, you can actually walk in and you can see right off the bat how flat that floor is from corner to corner, wall to wall, room to room, upstairs, downstairs, treads, risers, whatever it may be. And that's why I block sand.
Yeah.
Is that there is a purpose. Once you learn it, it would apply the same thing as getting that flat surface on that hot rod car. So when you shoot it with that $20,000 paint job, I think it's going to be dialed in just perfect. So again, that's some of the old school stuff when we didn't have all the other new tools that they have. So I stick to it. It's always treated me fair and square. So I'm sure I'll do that to my dying day.
Do you have any particular analogies or visuals that explain what are some of the tough things? Is there a part of the classes that you do that you go, all right, this is always the tricky, the tough part of to get through to people? Is it all pretty much the same standard issue stuff, or are other things difficult to teach?
I think it's pretty much the same. It's, if it's explained correctly, it's written correctly. That's the thing about putting the class together that way, is that you start to get into their way of thinking in the class to make them aware of things. It's how things are done. You may do it this way. I'm not saying the way we teach at class is the only way or the better way, but it is a way, and it's a start. But when they come to the class and they see something done differently, it's done quicker with less pain for them on the job.
Okay.
Then they sit up and pay attention. So I think would be the biggest thing is you get the student in the class that's bound and determined that he's going to do it his way no matter what you teach. And I'll give you a good example. We were doing a school up in Manhattan at the Carpenter Training Center there. This was, I think, in 2011. And I had a group of maybe 10 students at the class. And this was actually an NWFA class. I was actually at that school to help assist in teaching and training. And we had this one guy that was, I can run the edger. I can run it better than anybody at this panel right here. And so I went to each student at that class and I said, we're going to let this guy run the edger. And we let him run all the edges. Every time it comes time to edge, we let him run the final deal. First cut, second cut. And meanwhile, I was over on another panel spending time with the edger, taking all the other students so they would have time on the machine. I said, but we're going to let this guy run it. And we let this guy run it, and we stained it, and we finished it. And I got the whole group over there, the whole class, all the other panels and stations. And I got my light out. I said, all right, man, come over here to explain how you edge these edges like you did. And when I put the light on it, they was dug up. They was chopped up. There's swirls in it. And it had the last coat of finish on it.
Oh, no.
And I looked at the guy. I said, so Mr. Edger, man, I says, how are we going to correct your edging job?
Right.
And I threw that guy right under the bus because of his ego and attitude at that class.
Yep. And
all the other students were annoyed with him. They were done with him. And I figured the only way that I could get his attention was to do it the way I did it.
Yeah.
Now, that's the only time I've done that. As far as I would not like to embarrass another fellow floor man.
Nope.
But this guy I did. And he was one of those guys that just wasn't going to back down.
Right.
So I figured instead of having a confrontation, I'll let him dig his own grave there. And when I put the light on it, he was speechless. I said, so what we're going to have to do to this floor, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to resand the whole job. So if this were at Mrs. Smith's house and this were 4,000 square feet and these edges look like this, we're going to have to sand this whole job over.
Yep.
And I took that guy to the side. I said, look, man, I think I give you every opportunity to show you a few things that you could probably change that would help you do a better edging job. Yeah. And at the end, he apologized once I threw him under the bus.
Right.
But I felt at that point, I said, well, okay, I can get to this guy real quick. And that was the way that I chose to do. I've done that one time in 30-something years.
Best lesson ever, right there.
Lesson learned for him, and maybe he left that class a changed man as well.
He's asking for it.
He was asking for it.
How do you do that in a room full of pros? You had mentioned earlier about people doing different things. I was talking to Sprig Lynn, and he said, we had 40 of the best guys in the world down working on this one big project. And he goes, they look over your shoulder and go, I wouldn't do it that way.
Right. So Stephen, in training that way, it's that it could be done differently, and you try not to say it in the fashion that you done that wrong.
Right.
And you don't want to say that. You just train them and show them that if you change your clocking of the edger, if you do these few things, it will change exactly how this machine cuts. And once they learn that, I think you earn their respect at that point. Instead of throw them under the bus, you don't want to do that. You want to say, hey, Wayne, he goes, hey, did I do it wrong? I said, no, you didn't do it wrong. You just did it differently. So let me show you a different way, or maybe incorrectly or something like that. So you got to be sure to keep your own attitude in check of how you train and speak.
Was that guy able to try something different, try a new technique, and work it out a little bit?
At the end, he took a couple more shots at it, but the damage was done at that point. That he Who's pretty quiet after that, should I say?
Hell, hey, you got to back it up. All right, so let me ask you a couple questions. We're going to move into a little segment about teaching around the world. You've actually been around the world, and we're talking, Australia, China, Mexico. Since you've taught literally across continents, what are there really cultural differences that influence the style of flooring? Like, even the wood, are there different types of wood? Is it different techniques? Are the machines, are there American standard machines all over the world? Does everybody have something different?
There's different machines. So American standard machines are pretty much all over the world.
Yeah.
In certain countries. But I'd like to start, and when you say teaching around the world, I'd like to start at the beginning where that was initiated at. I was actually at the 1994 September School in Memphis, Tennessee, and we had a group of Chinese professionals there from a U.S. office, which is called AHEC, which is the American Hardwood Export Council out of Washington, D.C., and they were there from the Hong Kong branch in Memphis, Tennessee. And at that school, it came about that they wanted to do a NAFMA school in Hong Kong or Kowloon. That was in 1994. At that point, Mickey and I began to put together all the logistics of how that school would work, as well as AHEC out of Washington, D.C., to make sure that the logistics as far as travel, hotel stay, the area or venue that where we're going to do the training was actually done at the World Trade Center in Kowloon. So that was the first international school, and that was the first NAFMA international school ever done outside of Memphis, Tennessee. And so that school became a reality in 1996. There was a group of us that flew from the States to China to put that school on, and that was Mickey Moore, Coley Armstrong, Don Bollinger, John Bast, and myself, right? And those were some names that they were all wood floor men. And we all went to China and put on a class. We had 62 students. We had, I want to say, six panels. We had 10 on each panel. We had a real nice classroom. We had a successful school where we installed American products. So AHEC stands for American Hardwood Export. Okay. So what they did is they supported any American domestic product, whether it's red oak, white oak, American cherry, walnut, anything that was shipped out of the States to another country. They would put together seminars and classes. So whether it was building furniture, they would have classes in some country where they built furniture. And it just so happened that they wanted to put together classes for wood flooring since there was so much domestic American wood flooring being shipped abroad. So that's how that class came about. Again, that was a 5-day class. It was successful. The first international school done for NAFMA. And at that point, I had already been hired on at the NWFA. So then again, it was a joint school, but initially it was put on by NAFMA to start out with.
Who initiated that? Did China say, "Hey, we need this"? Or
so it was the office in Washington, D.C., American Hardwood Export Council, and the office in Hong Kong got together, and they said they think this would be good. And we did that class there. It was the beginning. And then there were classes also that we did down in Mexico City. And there were a number of classes that were, again, NAFMA, NWFA classes in Mexico City, where you would have maybe 70 students for that class. You may have 10 panels, and had a group of men go there, again, from the States. And we had some local help from the AHEC office out of Mexico City actually help along. And those classes went very well. You may have 70 to start out with, and the next day you may have 170 show up. So the word got out real quick that we were doing a wood floor school down at this building and on this floor. And it was a really good experience. Those schools always went really good. And when you talk about the culture, the language barrier, believe me, being from the South, I'm sure I talk a foreign language to a lot of people. So you folks up here in the North talk funny. I talk perfectly fine.
Damn straight.
So I would say this, the language barrier was never a problem. And the reason is that even when we did the schools in China and we did schools down in Mexico, we all wore transponders. So when I would speak English, they would speak whatever language. A good example was I did a big seminar school in China after the initial NAPA school. We went back and did some more stuff. And there were probably 10 different dialects of the Chinese language. And they had sound booths put up, and they had interpreters for those who spoke this type of language or this type of language, that when I would speak, they would automatically say what I would say. And if there was a problem with a word that they couldn't translate, they would tell me to say it in a different way. So they would speak into my earpiece and say, hey, Daniel, could you say that? Could you explain that in a different way? And so I really had to think about, all right, this is how I explain it. This is the way I see it. How am I going to explain it in a way that they could translate? So I would say it was never a problem, just a little glitch here and there. And I would say time had added to the class with maybe an extra 15, 20 minutes in a day. So it was good. Same thing in Mexico. They had sound booths set up. They had interpreters come in. They would take 30-minute segments. So they would interpret for 30 minutes, and maybe another person would sit down and interpret. Maybe they would sit there for an hour. But they had maybe a dozen interpreters with maybe 4 or 5 sound booths that they could sit in where they wouldn't be interrupted, and they would actually interpret what I was saying or ever what instructor was what they were saying. They would interpret, and the class went very smooth. So I didn't, there was a problem. And the thing about it is you can show somebody something, and it speaks more than 1,000 words. If you demonstrate something and you show them how to do it with their hands, and they'll pick right up on it. So from the classes that we taught in any of those countries went smoother than what you would expect, and delivered more, I think, were more impactful than if you were just in an English-speaking class that they caught on real quick to what was going on.
So like a NATO summit, you always see them with the headpieces, and
and you gotta keep in mind too, whatever country you're in, there's also a lot of people there that speak English.
Sure.
Yep.
Wow. So how about Australia? So I love listening to the Aussies because they don't call it like the Flooring Association. Isn't it like it's called Timber Floor?
It's called Australian Timber Flooring Association.
Right. There you go.
And that actually was formed in 2005. So initially, back in 98, a group of us got together at the NWFA. I was still tech director there. And we had a couple meetings. I know Christine Coates was part of that, as well as Woody Hilscher and a number of other people that were part of the education committee. And we put together a program to go down to Australia to do a 4-day sand and finish class. And so a group of us went. Once it was all put together, we went in 1999. And this school was actually done in Sydney, Australia. And it was done at the same venue area that the 2000 Olympics were at the following year.
Yeah.
So we went there, and from the U.S., we had Jack Campbell, Chris Coates, myself, Wayne Lee, Mark Long, Lon Musloff, my dad, Joe Boone. We had, Frank Krupa. We had Bob Bailey out of Austin, Texas. And I hope that I'm not missing anyone. But there was a good group of American professionals went down there. We installed these panels. They were probably maybe 15, 16 foot square with all Australian products, brush box, spotted gum, whatever it may be. Installed all these panels. We had some American Standard equipment there.
Okay.
And we did a 4-day sand and finish school. And that pretty much set the stage of how things were, I guess, changed from that particular class for the Australians as well as the Americans, because we learned a ton from the Australians. And they had the attitude of, you American guys are not going to come down here and teach us anything.
Yeah. Right.
And it was great. At that class, there was a lot of friendships made. There was a lot of good stuff that were taught and trained. And the ones responsible for that class was Malcolm Johnston, who worked with Boral Timber. That school was sponsored by Boral Timber. And Robert Clegg was also a big part of putting that together. And Barry Olzak was also a part of being there to support work, set up, making sure everything was done correctly. And I think 6 years after that, in 2005, was when the ATFA was formed. And this year in October, they'll be celebrating their 20th year of being in existence for the ATFA, the Australian Timber Flooring Association. And We actually, Christine Coates and I, put all the curriculum together, as well as all the PowerPoint presentations. And we went back in 2007, and we were invited back to help the ATFA put together a school program that would be equivalent to the NWFA school program. So we actually spent 5 consecutive years going back and forth to Australia, probably up to 2-3 times a year or more. So we went in 2007 and 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2011. And during that process, we did a basic school. And then from the basic school, we moved to an intermediate school. I think that next year in 2008. And then we did an advanced school where we had borders, medallions, multimedia, everything, sled jigs, making everything, show them how to take their product and make it into a nice looking floor. And at the same time, teaching those schools with our American team, we also had an Australian team of installers and finishers. And we had Barry, we had Robert, we had a guy by the name of Andrew Sheriff, Tony Powell. We had the Stringer brothers, Chris and Dave Stringer. And I know there's a whole group there that I would love to thank for their time and give the appreciation for those guys sticking it out through that whole process. But during that time of putting the school together, we also we had a trainer program to take these Australian timber floormen to train them how to run a class, how to teach, how to take what's in their mind, in their hearts, put it in the minds of others, but bring these other students in as they went along to teach and train them just like we did here in the States. And that was a big deal. That was a 5-year process, and it was worth every minute, every second to work with all my friends down in Australia who became like brothers and still are to this day. And I was just there back in 2023. I want to say I was there. So again, we worked there till 2011. I didn't go back myself until 2017, being training for American Sanders. We sell equipment in Australia. And so we went back in 2017, we went back in 2019, and we went back in 2023. And we actually did schools in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and we would put on sand and finish schools there. So the whole thing for the ATFA was, to me, it was a great honor to be able to work with them. It was a great honor to be able to put that whole school program together for those guys, and then to see the success of it when you go down there now, what they're doing, how they're teaching. There's a whole group of professionals. I was just actually in 2023, we were at a show in, let me see, just north of Brisbane. Let me see here, I'll get it out. It'll come to me in a minute, but they had their gala awards, and I was amazed at how many people from the wood flooring industry in Australia that were at that award banquet. Was amazing.
Right.
There was a couple, 200 or 300 people there, if not more. The room filled full of it. To see that from 1999 till present day was a huge change. So again, my hat's off to all that were involved, to Malcolm and Robert, Barry, Christine Coates for just making all the time and effort. I mean, it was a lot of time, and sometimes it wasn't easy, because your days you were catching a train at 5 a.m. You're already on the other side of the world, so your clock's all messed up.
Yep.
And being on that platform at the Southern Cross Rail Station in Melbourne, we were doing schools at different venues. Then we started doing schools at the TAFE, which was a university where the Australians teach building furniture, sewing, banking, computer, flooring, plumbing, electric. They teach everything. at these university facilities. And we had the opportunity to have this space or the venue to do class at a couple of different one of those. So it was worth, again, I want to say it was worth every minute to go there and put all that stuff together.
This episode is brought to you by Odie's Oil. Developed by a wood flooring pro, no finish is more safe, durable, beautifying, and versatile, with lower cost and higher profit margin. Experience the pinnacle of finish with free on-site demos and training. Learn more at odiesoil.com. That's ODIES oil.com.
I heard a lot online about the Train the Trainer program. A lot of it, most I heard from you. Whose brainchild was that? How long has that been around? Because that makes so much sense. Let's train some trainers so we don't have three guys doing everything. That's brilliant.
Right. So Train the Trainer came from Chris and I in the early days of 1996 at the NWFA.
Yeah.
Where we had a program called Train the Trainer. And believe it or not, it took maybe 20 years for that program to come to life. I know Brett Miller with the NWFA now has done a good job of putting some good floor men together for Train the Trainer program.
Yeah.
That's been in existence for a while, but it started back in 1996, and it was up on my desk probably for a number of years there. And the first person hired in that Train the Trainer program was Steve Seabaugh out of Cape Girardeau, who is a wonderful person. He's an awesome floor man and a good friend. And I actually hired Steve, I want to say probably somewhere maybe 99 or 2000. At probably about the time I was exiting the NWFA, I hired Steve.
Yeah.
He became the tech trainer for NWFA, and I think Steve was probably there for 10 years. And then when Steve left, I think it was Frank Rupa, but Steve was the first guy I chose in that Train the Trainer program. And talking about choosing the right person for the job is that he was another one of those professionals that could take from his mind and heart and from the floor and put into the mind and hearts of others. But when you're training and be super effective at it, the way his training style is, it's very, very simple and elementary, but very powerful and effective in a way. So Steve done an excellent job. Matter of fact, Steve will be at my school in September for a couple of days there. He helped me teach us the advanced class, the American Standards advanced class in Charlotte there at the training center, along with my son, Justin Boone. And Brandon Ellis will be there from the company. And I think I'll have one of my cousins there, Chandler Morgan. So we're going to have a good class, small group. I think we allow 12 at that class.
Right.
But again, a very effective class with very effective instructors.
With China, Mexico, and Australia, which one did one have more American attendees that said they made that trip? Was it Australia?
I'll say the Australia one, yeah.
Yeah, because Americans in Australia have equally been kicked out of some of the finest countries in the world.
Right. And so when
common existence.
Yeah, when we went back in 2007, 8, and 9, and 10, I took Steve Seabaugh went, Mickey Moore went from NAFMA. I actually had Tom P. Otter from Oshkosh Floors. At one point there, we took Tom down, did some border work stuff. Todd McDonald, who was a great guy, another one that if you wanted a sidekick, Todd McDonald's a contractor up in Michigan, but he also worked for some of the bigger manufacturers. He worked for Basic Coatings. He worked for Glitza. I think it's the last company he worked for. But Todd's one of those guys you can take anywhere and know that he'd back you up 110%. So those are some of the guys that played a part, that were a part of the Australian group. There's a number of them there that I probably haven't mentioned. And there's also a number of the Australians that played a part in to help us build the school. So Mark Sultana was one of them, the Stringer brothers, again, Malcolm. And when you get there, you're putting this school together. We showed up one time, I think it might have been I want to say it was the initial school in 2007. It was the first one. And nothing was set up the day before the school. Because when we sent all the instruction, there were some logistic problems. So between a handful of Australians and all those American guys, we built that whole NAFMA-sized school up in one day. And that day was brutal. So we have bleachers. We have a demo panel.
Yeah.
We can set all 60, 70 students up on the bleachers. So when you're demonstrating, they're all sitting right there. They're sitting up high. They don't miss a lick. And everybody's got their base to cover. And we started that class. That was a 3-day basic class, and it went flawless from day one to day end. And then at the very next time, I think we went back to, I want to say the same venue twice, and then we were at a different venue for 2009. But we went back, we did the basic school, then we did our intermediate class, and then we did an advanced class. We did 3 schools in a row. So you're down there 4 to 6 weeks making all these things work. You tear down from one school, you build up for the next, and each school would qualify you. So if you went to the basic school, that would qualify you for the intermediate school. If you went to the intermediate school, that would qualify you for the advanced school. So this group of guys, and we had some new ones that come along that maybe went to school the year before that had qualified. But that was pretty brutal doing 3 schools in a row.
In one city, you didn't move around.
In one city.
It's a big.
That was
Australia's big.
That was a big taking.
Is there anything when you were doing the stuff abroad? Is there anything that you picked up that you brought back with you that wasn't American, wasn't what you learned? You're like, hey, guess what I learned over there?
Oh yeah, I think at every school, when I can't identify what, but every school I do know this. Some guy would have some little tool, some little gig, some little trick that he did, and the first thing he'll do is say, "Man, I've been doing that all these years. Why didn't I think of that?" And you'd look, and it would be something pretty awesome, And that's happened probably at every school. You'll meet somebody that's got their own way of doing it, and I think that's what makes the schools, to me, the best. That's what makes the schools a learning platform where you can learn from each other. But I can say at every school you learn something from one another, and I think the deal is that you see the passion that we all have for the trade, and I think I'll go back to say what Robert Clegg said to me one time. There's earning respect and there's commanding respect, and I think some of us teach as you go along and you do earn respect, but also you command it because you're a part of a group of professionals, a team that's probably like none other. And you got 50 students coming in today, and you can all look at each other, and there's a certain code there that you know what your responsibility is, and you know what you have to do to make it through these 3 days, 4 days of this class, or in the one case where we did those schools consecutively, it took a lot. And I would say the biggest thing is being an instructor, self-discipline. You heard me touch on this earlier. You can't go out and get drunk the night before and expect you're going to come into class and be a great instructor. And if you can't keep that in check, then you're going to have problems at the school from day one. And if it's one guy doing it, then you can work that out. But if it's half the class of instructors that's doing it, you'll have problems.
Big old problems.
So for 5 days, you got to give yourself to these students and leave your personal life out of it, and just walk the line for 5 days and do your best. And I think in the end, it'll work out just fine.
Yeah, well, I think you've got a track record of proving that. What have you seen from your teaching that permeated into what we do, and whether it's the textbooks or how people learn today? Where have you contributed that you look around and go, yeah, I did that?
I don't think I ever do that, Steve. And the reason I say is that there's some significance about this label on my shirt that says wood floor man, or on my hat.
Yep.
And I'll start out there. So to me, I looked at it as a lowly job probably in my earlier days. You're sitting in class at grammar school, and, teacher asked you to stand up, tell us who you are. And back in those days, I don't think Mom worked. She was a homemaker, but what did your dad do for occupation? And little Johnny would say, well, my dad's a fireman. And little Mary would say, well, my dad's a doctor. Little Susie would say, my dad's a lawyer. And for me to get up to say my dad's a wood floor man was like getting up to say my dad's a garbage man.
Right.
So I learned as from a kid going along there that I became extremely proud of my dad being a floor man. But when you're a kid, growing up, and you're asked these questions, so every time you would go to school, you would have to fill something out as what your father's occupation was. And in one word, I would write wood floor man in one word. So that's where my social media name, Instagram name, or whatever came, wood floor man. And believe me, I ain't too fancy on all that social media stuff. But wood floor man, as I look at it as a life, as a career, as a craft, as a trade, as a skill, for that word to me speaks for all of us who are wood floor men. And so my way of teaching is, I know that guy that's going to walk in the door that may have no self-confidence, may look at his trade in a different way, maybe as I once did. And what can you do to lift this guy's spirits up or gal's spirits up to make them realize that, hey man, this trade it's a craft, it's a art. Yep. You have skills and talent that you can apply here. So in my teaching, that's that's the way I look at it, is that I take it very seriously. I take the classes very seriously. I take it very seriously when a guy calls me on the weekend and say, hey, Dan, I'm in trouble on this job. Walk me through to how to get myself out of this, how to correct this. And believe me, that phone rings 24/7 for a wood floor man. So I look at that in the fashion is that it was and is my life as a wood floor professional. And I'm thankful every day that I was born in that family, because I sure didn't choose to be born in it. And I always got to saying, if my dad was a plumber, I'd still be up to my neck in shit.
Right.
You know?
I love it.
So me and a wood floor man, you look at your kids coming up, you say, man, do I want to do that to your son or your daughter, you know? And so I think of it in that way, is that it is a good trade. I would encourage anybody to do it. It's a good living. Would change for the world.
Yeah.
That's how I look at that is.
Yeah. There's a humbleness or a humility that comes along with it.
There is.
Let me ask you, you must have a mental list of former students and people that you've watched come along that have gotten places that you like. I remember that person when they were just a kid. You got a few in there that have really, they pop out there now.
Be a tough one. I guess the first one that comes to mind is a young man up in Michigan named Jaime Espinoza. And I met Jaime, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago at Paul in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Ed Westfall's place. And I was actually doing an edger demonstration. And I think we had 12, 16 students. It was a one-day class. And I was actually doing this edger work, and I seen this young man looking at me. He come over and said, hey, man, he said, you show me how to run that edger like that? And I said, sure. And I took a little time with him. And then it was just a matter of months. He came to another school. So we're doing a school down in Austin, Texas. I would help Johannes Boonstraw teach the Rubio schools out in Spicewood, Texas.
Oh, cool.
And all of a sudden I looked on the class list, and there's Jaime Espinoza. And then I did another American Standard School. I think we had an advanced school come up that same year. And I looked on the list, and there's Jaime Espinoza. So I said, okay, this guy's going to follow me around. And he's a great guy. He's smart. He's passionate about what he does. But he started showing up at the schools. And he would be one that of many, to remember names back from 30 years ago would be a little tough. But I can say there's a number of guys that at a NWFA show somewhere along the line, they came up to me and said, man, I went to your school back in 1996. And at that point, it changed the whole direction of how I thought, how I worked, how I built my company. And also down in Australia, I would run into a number of those guys down there that came to the first initial school back in 1999. And here it is all these years later. And they going to that one school changed the whole course of how they did things in business, how they did things in thinking, how they did things on the job. And I think that's what's needed, is that, again, who's going to fill those shoes? Who's the next group of professionals come up that's willing to take their life experience and share it with everyone that comes in the room? And I've been told plenty of times, man, why do you want to give your trade secrets away? Because if it took all these years to figure that out, and you could teach that at a school, you will advance that person by that many years. Is he going to learn from that? It's a good place to start, and I'm sure that he's going to sharpen and hone his skills to be even better, than maybe this generation. So I look at it that way, is that Jaime would be a good one that really sticks in my mind, that started following the school around from place to place. And now his level of expertise is that when he bids a job, and I've had some good talks with Jaime, he would be the one to call up on the weekend and say, man, I got this job ready for oil, but I've got scratches in it and I can't get them out, and it's a walnut floor. And you walk him through the whole process, but he would call up in desperation of, hey, Dan, he's always called me Dan. Hey, Dan, help me get out of the spot. But he's the one that took what he learned and applied it. So his level of skill within just a short 2 years went from, just say, 5 years experience to 35 years experience of learning all the techniques and the skills at the class to go back and apply to that job. And I think that's what a lot of them gain, is that they advance themselves in years of experience by attending the class and learning how to do things in a different way. and applying it to their everyday life, everyday job, that makes them that much more better of craftsman or professional.
How about colleagues? Let me be selfish, because one of the people I just miss dearly that I loved working with was Bill Price Sr. Love Billy Jr. Good. I just love him.
Right.
But Bill Price Sr., did you work with him?
I worked with Bill. I was I actually did Bill's floors in his personal home.
I love it.
Down at the Villages, and I had some quality time with Bill for a number of weeks. I got some real good video and pictures of Bill and I working on his house. So Bill was a wonderful guy. He was a very humble guy, very soft-spoken, and a wealth of knowledge. And that's what I mean is that you've done this for 50 years. You can't Google it. You can't buy it. It's nowhere to be found but to live every day of those 50 years on your hands and knees on that floor, trying to make that customer happy. And in doing that, Bill had it all there. It was an honor to work with Bill. I used to do a lot of stuff for Disney.
Yeah.
And I would go over to the Villages and pick Bill up, and we would ride down to these jobs that we were doing down at Disney.
Yeah.
And in those jobs, you had to work at night. It was brutal to have to do all that. But I'd take Bill down and just let him apply all his knowledge to how would Bill do it.
When you start talking to people around the country and you go, oh, that's not how they do it in Boston or down in Tampa or over in Louisiana, and you go, oh, it's not just our little world here in New England. There's a lot of things done very well, very different ways depending on a lot of things. Look at just the situation in Seattle and its environment. It's a lot like New Hampshire.
Right.
It's nothing like Scottsdale, Arizona. There are places that like 5/16 solid flooring would fail miserably, like here.
Right.
Not in other places.
Yeah, I'd like to make mention of, if we're talking about that, I'll look back probably almost 40 years, 35 years. So working in Atlanta, I had a young lady working for me by the name of Tracy Moore. And she was probably, I don't know, 31, 32, and Tracy was probably about 22, 23. And I hired her hired her to run the edger. Clean, scrape, run the edger. And Tracy worked with me on some pretty interesting jobs. We were doing a big job in Columbia, South Carolina. It was 10,000 square feet of Brazilian cherry. It was herringbones, lefts and rights, had some border work stuff in it. And through the whole thing, the whole 18th floor. And Tracy worked on that job. Started that job in 87 and completed it probably somewhere around August, September of 88 with all the finish on it. But Tracy helped on that job as far as running the edger, keeping stuff clean, keeping stuff in order. I mean, this gal she was the best of the best. And again, that's one young lady that you took the time with every day to show her the correct way to do things and run things and excel in skill and knowledge. She did. And she was a great person to work with. So I look back and you talk about people that stick out. She would be another one that would be from way back. And I actually still keep in touch with her to this day. She remembers everything, every job that we did. And it's good to see that is that as you grow older, everybody else does all at the same time. But you look back over your shoulder, these people came to your class that were maybe younger at that time, that they have their own businesses, they've sent their kids to college, bought a house, built a business, you name it. And so, yeah, it's a good thing.
If I'm, because we could talk forever, I've told you this would go like a breeze. I want to roll into the quick fire questions, and thank you for being here because we've covered a lot of ground. Here we go. First of all, you have a favorite wood species? Like if you had to pick one, favorite wood species?
Yeah, I'd say white oak and walnut.
Yeah,
my favorite
right?
wood species, quarter white.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm loving it. In all your bag of tricks, is there one particular, whether it's a power tool or hand tool, you have a favorite tool? Like you're taking it to the grave with you, no one gets it.
Hand scraper.
Everybody says it, man. I'm telling you. Before you start the job in the morning, coffee, no coffee?
A little coffee.
All right.
Whole lot of praying.
Some people have to have either prayer or caffeine. Can you remember if there's any particularly super unusual flooring situation you've encountered? I've seen people find boards upside down. I've seen people all sorts of anything
unusual situation.
Anything unusual that you've encountered in your flooring career?
Most of those are X-rated.
Yeah, see, that happens. We'll get to those.
I've had to say one. I'll go back to probably, I'll say about 19. It's your first experience. You're out running jobs. You got a crew. You pull up to a house, and this was in Jacksonville, on the old side of town, one of the south side, or see what they call that, kind of like the Arlington area. There's another name for it, but anyway. So we go to this house, and my mom had written at the top of the job order, be there at 8 o'clock sharp. Well, you've asked me to be somewhere at 8 o'clock sharp. I'm almost up 6:45.
Right.
So I'm going to be there. I'm going to make sure I'm there at 8 o'clock sharp. So it was 7:45, and I go up, and I've got my cousin Steve and got some other workers there, and there's probably about 5 of us, and go up and knock on this door, So we go up, you knock on the door, and the house was built 1900s, big Victorian style house. And man, I could hear this feet print coming across this got a crawl space. You could hear this boom, boom, boom coming across the floor, And I just kind of looked around. This is back the day we had pagers, So I looked down at my pagers, what time it was, It might have been 7:55 or something. So I turn around and look, and I hear these footprints coming. And this lady opens the door, and just to the top of her lungs, she said, "It ain't 8 o'clock yet," and slammed the door, I turned around and looked, and I just put my hands up. I looked at all these guys standing there looking at me. We all kind of started laughing, and we stood there. So I really didn't know what to do. So I just stood in that one spot, just standing at the door. I looked down at that pager, and 8 o'clock, man, I tapped on the door, and this lady come to the door. She opened the door. She said, "Good morning. How y'all doing? Coffee, donuts?" And I turned around and looked at the guy. They go, "She got an evil twin sister
somewhere."
But it was the same lady with a whole different attitude, a whole different demeanor. And I could say that stuck out like a sore thumb. And I never forgot that. That was probably the strangest time of my life. And you had to work it. It took us like maybe 2 months to get through this job.
Yeah.
And that lady was the same way every day you showed up. She was in your face, telling you what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. And finally, one day, I blurred her name out, and I said, "Well, we're going to call her Mrs. Smith." I said, "Mrs. Smith, will you just leave us alone and let us do our job?"
Just go away.
It was terrible. So, yeah, that job sticks out.
That's funny. In your home, we're talking about Florida here. You have any carpets in your home?
There ain't no carpet in my house.
See that? That's the right answer.
Yeah. At the doors to keep the dirt off, but yeah.
There you go.
No carpet at the house.
Carpet, today's threshold. So, all right. Do you have anything you want to tell me that's coming up? What workshops you coming up? What appearances you got coming up? What's on the road for you for the rest of the year? You must be going everywhere.
Okay, so we got an Edgar school out in Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
Coming up the week of August 11th. Okay. So we got one on the 12th, a Tuesday, and Edgar school on the 14th that's coming up. Also, we got an advanced class, September 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. That's a Tuesday till Friday. That's an advanced, that's 2-day install, custom work, and then 2 days sand and finish. Steve Seabaugh will be a part of that class. Justin Boone will be a part of that class. Chandler Morgan will be part of that class. And I think I've got 10 students for that class at this time. There's 12 out, so 2 spots left. And then in October, I will be down at the ATFA Awards. I think I'm down there for about 2 weeks down in Melbourne, Australia. So I'll be down there supporting those folks and their success of a good timber floor association.
So you're just taking it easy, not a lot going on, right?
Yeah, taking it easy.
His schedule's 10 times worse than mine. You're the floor guy. I once told Howard Brickman when I grow up I want to be him, but I'd have to include you.
I'm just a wood floor man.
You're just the wood floor man.
That's it, man.
And you know what? I thank you very, very much for being here. I appreciate all the time. People are going to love this podcast and play it over and over and over and over and over as long as they drive safely. I thank you very much, Daniel, for being here. It's great.
Thank you, Steve.
It's a great, great honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation with lifelong wood floor pro Daniel Boone. To see some of the many articles he's written or been involved with in Wood Floor Business Magazine, check out the show notes for this episode. And if you liked this episode, please remember to rate and review All Things Wood Floor. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening.